Hook Tavern, located at the corner of U.S. Route 50 and Smoky Hollow Road. It is believed that the log dwelling was built in 3 stages, with the first portion erected in the late 1700s or early 1800s. Records show that Samuel Hook, who lived from 1792 to 1876, was listed as an innkeeper at this location along the Northwestern Turnpike. The Capon Bridge Public Library, along U.S. Route 50 in Capon Bridge, opened in 1888 by Mr. Zepp. This building was known as Prospect Tannery. The mill could grind 2 1/2 cords of wood per minute. The wood was used to turn out 300 sides of sole leather per week, or 1,200 pounds a day. The leather was used to make shoes and boots. The tannery employed up to 15 people, whose main job was to cart leather to Winchester and return with more hides. Giffin's Funeral Home, along U.S. Route 50 in Capon Bridge. It was built in 1833 by James Cawdy. Subsequent owners were the Chamberlains, the McDonalds who operated a store there, Amos Pugh, and the Roy Giffin family who operate a funeral home. Fort Edward's Inn, named for the original stockade fort. In 1748, a tract was conveyed by Lord Fairfax to Joseph Edwards. The original fort was built in 1754 during the French and Indian War. The present owner is Doug Adams. The Gardner House was once the office of Dr. D.T. Oates, who moved to Martinsburg and was influential in starting the city hospital. It is owned by Bernice Gardner. Dr. Gardner's office, located on U.S. Route 50, it was a dentist's office and is now owned by his second wife, Bernice Gardner. At one time, it served as the Capon Bridge Public Library. Moss Rock Inn, located on River Road. It was built by Samuel Cooper, once a state legislator. He married Martha Nixon, who resided at Moss Rock Inn with a slave named Black Mary, whom at death the Wards buried at Capon Chapel Cemetery. The James Bond House, located on River Road and built circa 1800. The present owners are Larry and Leon Foltz. The Christian Church, located on River Road, known as the Disciple Church. It was built in 1907 on the site of the old town hall, which for several years was used as a normal school, a 2-year college. Walnut Grove School, located on River Road and built in 1880 by Mr. George F. Davis. It is an original one-room schoolhouse which was once used in Hampshire County. The Willard Wirtz Home, located on River Road. This structure was built in the 1800s by George F. Davis and is constructed of logs and German siding. It is presently owned by Mr. and Mrs. Willard Wirtz. He was Secretary of Labor under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson. The Captain David Pugh Home, located on River Road. It is currently owned by Marie Brill. Yellow Springs Mill. It was built about 1830. It burned in 1862 and was rebuilt in 1865. It burned in 1892 and was rebuilt in 1898. It was the last mill run by water power until it went electric in 1954, at which time Cawdy G. Davis was owner. It had been in the Davis family since 1913, and Galen Davis is the current owner. Capon Springs Highway Marker, located on Route 259 and Route 16. Capon Springs was discovered in 1765 and bears an Indian name meaning medicine waters. Capon Springs Resort, owned by the Austin family, discovered in 1765 by Mr. Henry Fry. The water of Capon Springs was used to cure his wife's illnesses. For many years it was known as Fry's Springs. In 1849, a company was formed to construct a resort hotel, which was one of the largest structures in the South. Many famous people visited the resort before the Civil War. Mr. and Mrs. Robert E. Lee were visiting the spa in 1859 when he was called to Harper's Ferry to put down the attack by John Brown. Following the fire in 1911, the current main building was erected. Willow Chapel, located at Capon Springs. It is a United Methodist church. Capon School, located on Route 259 at Layhew. It was built by the Board of Education in 1952. The last classes were held there in 1968. Following that, the students went to Capon Bridge due to consolidation of schools. Shiloh Church, located at Highview, West Virginia. The present structure was built circa 1900. Isaiah Reed and the Brill family and many others built the original log building, which was a school and a church. A divider in the church made it a two-room schoolhouse. Cemetery, the original log structure set here. Church members are trying to verify that a preacher was buried under the pulpit. The hand-hewn pews from the original structure are in the current building. Shiloh Church is a Methodist church. Capon Chapel, located on Christian Church Road. It was originally organized as a Baptist church circa 1756. During services, the youngsters sat on the dirt floor. It was recently restored by the Methodist membership. The pastor is Jim Spielman. Elizabeth Caudy, oldest grave in Capon Chapel. She died on November 19, 1816. Samuel Hook's grave, and the graves of his wives Anne and Elizabeth. They lived at and ran the Hook Tavern on Route 50 east of Capon Bridge. Timber Ridge Church, located on Christian Church Road in Highview, West Virginia. The original structure was built in 1815 of logs. The current building was erected in 1875, and the first minister was the Reverend John Barney. The original iron railing still encircles the church and graveyard. Bridge across North River, located on Coldstream Road. Prior to the construction of the bridge, the people had to ford the river. If the river was too high, burials in a cemetery on the hill had to be delayed until the waters receded. North River Mills United Methodist Church, located on Coldstream Road. William and Sally Miller gave the land where this church, which was built in 1893, sits. The original church was built in 1841, and a few rocks from its foundation are still visible at that site. Jim Spielman is the pastor. John Miller Home, located on Coldstream Road at North River Mills. It is a two-story home that is 100 feet long. During the Civil War, the Union forces stayed there and breakfast for 50 was served. Sandy Ridge Church, located on Coldstream Road. This church was built about 1820. This stone and wood house, located on Route 29 North in Bloomery, was built by Mr. Leith. The original structure burned about 3 years ago and has been restored by Mr. and Mrs. Munger. The Bloomery Presbyterian Church, dedicated on July 20th, 1825. It is one of the earliest churches in Hampshire County. The Bloomery Iron Furnace was built in 1833 by Thomas Pastley and operated until 1881. Pots, pans, and iron griddles were made here. The annual capacity was 8,500 tons. Bloomery Gap Skirmish Highway Marker, located on Route 29 North. The Union forces routed the Confederate forces here. Cooper Mountain United Methodist Church, located on the corner of Timber Mountain Road and U.S. Route 50. Jim Spielman is the current pastor. Sinovic House, located on U.S. Route 50 at North River Valley. Blues Gap Battle. Confederate troops under Captain George F. Sheets were defeated by Colonel S.H. Dunning's 5th Ohio Infantry here, January 7, 1862. North River Bridge and a number of buildings were burned by the Federals. It is located on U.S. Route 50, 15 miles east of Romney. J.Z. Hardy Home, built in 1916 by J.Z. Hardy. It is on the hill overlooking Augusta, owned by Anna Lou, Mrs. Michael Shem. It is the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Skinner. The Beery House, originally owned by the Beerys. It is around 100 years old and is located on Route 29 South in Augusta. It is owned by Gil and Reba Harris. French's Mill, located at the intersection of Route 29 South and Mount Zion Road, Augusta. It was constructed in 1905 after the original mill was destroyed by fire. Shanks Post Office, located at Allen Hill Road in Shanks. It was built by Abram Shank and was used as a store and post office until 1972. Walnut Grove School, reassembled at Hampshire High School, built in the 1800s. It was once located on Little Capon Creek Road. Where the walls are black, you can still read the Golden Rule. It was donated by Clyde Tutwiler. Ebenezer United Methodist Church, located on Route 50 east of Romney. The present structure was built in 1907. Old pictures of the West Virginia schools for the deaf and the blind. The four views show the changes of the main structures over the years. The schools were established in 1870 for the education of the hearing and visually handicapped children of the state of West Virginia. The original building, now the administration building, was offered by the Literary Society of Romney on behalf of the citizens of Romney. Other grantors gave adjacent land, and in 1919 the Potomac Academy was purchased by the state in order to provide separate facilities for the School for the Blind. Many changes and additions have since taken place, including the construction of buildings and the expansion of services. The present structure of the administration building of the West Virginia Schools for the Deaf and Blind. The Wright Family House, located on U.S. Route 50 in Romney. It was built prior to 1862, as it is in a sketch by E.M. Hott, an artist in General Kelly's regiment. It was later owned by the Kirk family and is currently owned by St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, erected in 1885 and dedicated by Bishop Peterkin in November 1888. It is located on East Main Street in Romney, directly across from the state schools. Liberty Hall, located on U.S. Route 50, Main Street in Romney. It is assumed that the Liberty Hall was built in 1860. It was used by Stonewall Jackson as a headquarters during the Civil War. The present owners are Mr. and Mrs. Royce Seville. The Mrs. Keith Schaefer Home, located on U.S. Route 50, Main Street in Romney. This three-story colonial revival American four-square home was built by Governor John J. Cornwell about 1915. His term of office as governor was 1917 to 1921. This was the family home until 1959, at which time it was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Keith Schaefer. The first floor, with some alterations, became Schaefer Funeral Home, and the second and third floors serve as the private residence. In 1962, there was more remodeling and additional space was added. The Kearns House, or American Legion, located on Route 50, Main Street in Romney. It is located on Lot 97, a portion of the land grant of Lord Fairfax to Perez Drew, dated February 27, 1794. The home was originally occupied by Warner Throckmorton, mayor of Romney, in 1816. Tradition says it was built before 1800 by Hessian soldiers. The two-story home was designed in Federal-style architecture. It originally contained 5 fireplaces and hand-carved interior woodwork. Most of the woodwork has been preserved. but a later addition and placement of a large kitchen reduced the fireplaces to 4. Subsequent owners have been John and Rebecca Kearns, John and Sarah Kearns, E. Kearns and Lou Kearns, John Clower, Sidney and Mary Pancake, Dr. E.K. Wilson, who conducted his medical practice in the small room attached to the main building, and Charles Hannes. In May 1945, Mr. Charles Hannes sold it to the trustees of Hampshire Post and Unit 91, the American Legion and Auxiliary. Additions have been made to the building since then. The Boxwood, located on U.S. Route 50 beside the West Virginia Schools for the Deaf and Blind. Early records indicate that Dr. S.R. Lupton bought it in 1865 for taxes. It is not known if he was a doctor there when it was used as a Civil War hospital. While the soldiers recuperated, they wrote messages on the walls. Owners in the 1900s have been S.H. Williams, Eugene and Sally Cornwall Ailes, Mrs. Rosa Billmeyer and her son William, and the current owner, Mrs. John R. Blue. John R. Blue Home, located on U.S. Route 50 Main Street in Romney. Built in the early 1900s, it is a 2-story stucco structure with the original slate roof. It contains many antique furnishings. The present owner is Mrs. John R. Blue. William and Susie Russell Sam Pancake House, located at the corner of Main Street and Antego Place in Romney. It was built by William Russell circa 1890. He was a merchant and banker in Romney. He was born on Capon. Susan Howard Pugh Russell was his wife and was born near Capon Bridge and died at the New Century Hotel May 15, 1937. She married William Russell in 1880. His brother J. Edwin built Hampshire House 1884. William had a store on the corner of South Marsham and U.S. Route 50. In 1921, Dr. E.B. Martin from Augusta bought it for $10,000 and established a medical practice there. After his death, the house sat empty for a few years. Then the upstairs rented to Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer, and the downstairs to Sam and Effie Pancake. In 1934, the Pancakes bought it at public auction. Their daughters Sally Ann and Susan Pancake sold it to the present owners, Drs. Nabel and Zinnia Jerome. The Jeromes have recently restored it and established a medical practice there. BGS&G Realty, located at Main Street, Route 50, and Antego Place. It is known as the Arnold property. Romney Rexall Building, located on Main Street, U.S. Route 50, next to the courthouse. Built circa 1898, it was originally a general store owned by Mr. Gilkison. He sold it around 1912 to Walter R. Hill, who established W.R. Hill Pharmacy there. It was known for its nickel milkshakes and lemon phosphates. The current owners are Blair and Audrey Seville. Hampshire County Courthouse, located on the corner of North High and Main Street. It was erected in 1922. This is an old picture. An old postcard of the Hampshire County Courthouse. The present-day courthouse built 1922. The Hauser Buildings, located on Main Street in Romney. These early Victorian structures housed the martial law offices, a shoe store, and many other businesses through the passage of time. They are also dwellings. These buildings were destroyed in December 1988. Sheets Kirkendall Mercantile Building, located at the corner of Main and South High Streets. Built circa 1840, it was a general store. After the Civil War, James Sheets kept the funds collected for the establishment of the Confederate monument in the safe located there. There were no banks in Romney then. Jimmy Joe Hartman is the owner. Literary Hall, located at the corner of Main and North High Streets. The Romney Literary Society, founded 1819, used this building for its library and meeting place. The society had the largest library west of the Blue Ridge Mountains before the Civil War. Today it houses a private collection of Hampshire County furnishings assembled by owner Ralph W. Haynes. It is listed in the National Register of Historic Places and is a private museum and office. Old photo of the Hampshire Review building on West Main Street. It is currently the site of the C.W.W. Stoltz office. Old photo of the Hampshire Review building on West Main Street. Rooftop view left to right of the First National Bank building, jewelry shop, Old Hampshire Review office, and Bill and Bob's Barber Shop. Present-day view of the same location. Green Palm Restaurant, Romney Mercantile Building, located on West Main Street. The Romney Mercantile was a general store and one of the largest in Romney. Later, I.P. Levings bought the building and opened the Green Palm Restaurant. It is presently the real estate and law offices of Mr. and Mrs. Royce Seville. Davis History House, located on West Main Street adjacent to the Hampshire County Public Library. It is one of the oldest homes in Romney, deeded in 1795. The Davis family was a divided family during the Civil War. They donated the building, which contains many Civil War artifacts and local furnishings. It was restored by Ralph W. Haynes. Bernard Hill House, located at the corner of South High Street and Gravel Lane, built circa 1790. Early Hampshire County records show Francis Taggart owned this structure in 1795. The present owners are Mr. and Mrs. Bernard Hill. Wilson Woodrow Meidinger House, located 1 block south of Route 50 on Gravel Lane. It is the oldest house in Romney and consists of 3 separate buildings connected by porches. The center house, with its outstanding brick double chimneys, was possibly built for George Wilson, who was granted the property by Lord Fairfax in 1763. The owners are Thomas Stump, Robert Odell, Dottie Edis, and Lowell Hott. Hampshire House, 1884, located 1 1/4 blocks north of U.S. Route 50 at 165 North Grafton Street. It is a completely restored 1884 home which has been opened as a bed and breakfast country inn. There are period furnishings throughout. The owners are Scott and Jane Simmons. It was built by J. Edwin Russell, the brother of William Russell. Present-day photo of Romney School. Old photo of school children at the Romney School on South Grafton Street. The little girl on the front row standing is Helen Creamer, Elliot Heedwell's grandmother. The present owners are Mr. and Mrs. Charles Parsons. A 2-story Victorian structure on West Gravel Lane. It was recently restored by Dr. and Mrs. Philip Razuk. Built in the 1800s, it was the home of the Combs family for many years. The Presbyterian Church, located at the corner of Marsham Street and Rosemary Lane. This church was built in 1860 and was used as a hospital and stable during the Civil War. 10 years after the church was built, the walls began to spread due to the weight of the steeple. The steeple bell tower was removed and the iron rods were installed. An educational building was added in 1936. The Potomac Academy Reunion, in front of the Presbyterian Church. Robert Schilling Home, located at the corner of Marsham Street and Rosemary Lane. It was built in the early 1900s by a carpentry teacher employed by the West Virginia Schools for the Deaf and Blind. The present owners are Mr. and Mrs. Robert Schilling. Mr. and Mrs. Harold Welker Home, located at the corner of Rosemary Lane and Bolton Street. Records indicate that a dwelling was on that lot as early as 1835. It was bought in 1919 by Mr. and Mrs. Holly Shawn, the parents of Flo Welker. Flo and Harold Welker are the present owners. Located on the corner of Rosemary Lane and Bolton Street, this Victorian structure was built circa 1910 by George Clower. Louis Denkel bought it soon after. He made 2 apartments out of the house. In the fall of 1947, Mary Edna Mayhew bought it. Arthur Richard Mayhew is the present owner. Old photo of the Bible School at the First Baptist Church located on West Main Street. It was one of the oldest church buildings in town and was torn down in the early 1980s. Old photo of Main Street looking west. On the right is the old Keller House. Keller House. In 1848, Thomas Keller purchased the building for Mr. Armstrong and named it the Keller House. It was a stopping place for travelers on the Northwest Turnpike and military headquarters for both sides during the Civil War. It was torn down in 1913 and replaced by the New Century Hotel in 1914. The New Century Hotel, located at the east corner of Grafton and Main Streets. It was a 3-story red brick structure with an American colonial design. There was a double porch. It was a popular lodging place. Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt was one of the guests. The hotel closed and eventually the building was torn down. Old photo of a street scene at the stoplight on Main Street looking west. Old photo of a street scene in Romney. Notice the brick sidewalk. Old photo view from the water tower looking down Route 28. Notice the courthouse just right of center and the hill home left of center. 3 views of the old B&O Depot, located below Depot Hill in Romney. Notice the Camelback engine at the left. Old photo of Romney Grade School, built in 1905. It was used as both a high school and a grade school until 1930, when it became a grade school. It was torn down in 1952. It was located on the site of the present elementary school parking lot. Old Romney High School, located on School Street. It was built in 1930 and currently is used as part of Romney Junior High School. Indian Mound Cemetery, located on U.S. Route 50 West, behind the Romney Elementary School. It looks down into the South Branch of the Potomac. It was established in 1762 and contains Hopewell Indian Mound. Parsons Tower in Indian Mound Cemetery was completed in September 1925 as a memorial to Hampshire County's French and Indian War veterans and is to be rung whenever a veteran's descendant dies. It was dedicated to James Parson and Catherine Foreman Casey, his wife, their descendants and progenitors. The first Confederate memorial in the United States. It was erected in 1867 by the Daughters of the Confederacy. Names of the officers and enlisted men who died during the conflict are engraved in the monument. It was dedicated on September 26, 1867, and also has this inscription: "The daughters of Old Hampshire erect this tribute of affection to her heroic sons who fell in defense of the Southern rights." The Hopewell Indian Mound is 7 feet high and about 15 feet in diameter. It is one of the largest remaining mounds in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia and is estimated to be from 1,500 to 2,000 years old. The cemetery is named for it. An old postcard depicting the view looking up the river, south, from the Indian Mound Cemetery. Group of fruit buyers from Pittsburgh at the old B&O Railroad Station Depot in Romney. Old photo of a house whose location is unknown. Old photo of apple pickers in the orchard at Skyview overlooking Romney. An old photo of Bob Brady's gas station, which was located on Main and Grafton Streets in Romney. Members of the group pictured were called the Lion Tamers. Identified as William Russell, who is cashier of the Bank of Romney. In the background is a back view of the Workman Building, located on Main Street. Behind it was located the first burying place for the dead of Romney on the public square. It is now the parking lot of the Bank of Romney. The Alexanders, who lived in a log cabin on Sioux Lane and Bolton Street. The log cabin is no longer standing. The first band in Romney. The members are Ben Doherty, Arthur Peterson, Bert Grennett, Doman, Bill Levings, Liller, Henry Harmison, Walter Frederick, A.T. Patterson, Liller, Crock. A later picture of the band. First row, Charles Seaton, Louis Ruckman, Joe Grimm. Second row, Bill Levings, Bert Grimm, Ralph Wergman, George Harriet. Third row, Daley Moreland, Dick Doman, Earl Parker, Henry Harmison, Arthur Bennett, Gene Arnold. The last picture of the band as of August 19, 1928. This band gave concerts on the courthouse steps. They paid for their own instruments and owned summer and winter uniforms. First row, Daley Moreland, Bert Grimm, Grover Patterson, Bill Levings, Ralph Wergman. Second row, Dick Doman, Earl Parker, Carl Grimm, Bill Norton, John Snar, Louis Ruckman, Charles Moreland. Third row, Henry Harmison, Ray Luttrell, Carl Grimm, Gene Arnold. Sycamoredale, located on River Road just off Route 50 west of Romney. It was built between 1836 and 1839 by the slaves of David Gibson, an officer in the Confederate Army. The original farm included Indian Mound Cemetery, which Gibson bequeathed to the town of Romney. The present owner is Mrs. Mary Sue Williams. Hickory Grove, located on River Road. The original portion was built by slaves of Adam Stump between 1839 and 1849, with brick made and fired on the farm. The present owners are Adam and Zanna Stump and family. Joe A. Pancake Farm, Riverview, located on River Road. The present frame structure was built circa 1870 in front of an older stone structure from the 1830s. The present owners are the daughters of Mr. Joe A. Pancake. Peterkin Conference Center, Hampshire Clubhouse, located on River Road. It was built around the turn of the century by members of the Hampshire Club and is now owned by the Episcopal Church Peterkin Conference Center. Turley Bridge, near the Hampshire Club. It was built across Mill Run. Scenic overlook of the Pancake Farm and the South Branch River. It was taken from the spot known as Breakneck. View of the Pancake Farm at Breakneck, located on River Road 5 miles south of Romney. The visible structures, including a recently restored home from the mid-1700s, are owned by Bill and Mary Rose Pancake Hicks. End of first tape.